But yes, do have the opportunity to work with children with learning differences and love it, and do have an opportunity to work with families to help them to be equipped with tools and strategies to kind of help build those executive functioning skills. And a lot of times the kids that we have in our homes sometimes struggle with those things and the impact that it has in the classroom. And so we got a chance to do that. But what we're going to do with Jodi and Jerry is I'm going to ask them, I'm going to go through a few questions with them. I mentioned this, I guess a couple weeks ago. My son just finished 790 miles on the Appalachian Trail. And before he started the trail, he received 2 pieces of advice. And I just got to thinking about those 2 pieces of advice that he had gotten. And one of them was, hike your own hike. Now, he doesn't necessarily like that saying, but he's out back somewhere. So he didn't, but hike your own hike. Basically, it's your journey. And so nobody can change that journey. It's what God put forth for you. So hike your own hike. Don't let the expectations of the world or anybody around you change that for you. And I thought that was a really good piece of advice that he received. The second piece that he received was that this is not just a physical journey, it's a mental and spiritual journey as well. And when I got to thinking about those 2 pieces of advice that somebody had given him over and over and over again, I got to thinking about how that applies to everything we do too as parents. Every child that we bring into our home is a hike, is a journey, and it's a healing journey. It takes time. It's going to get there. I loved what Tony said the other night about how we're in it for the long haul, right? And then also that it is physical. There is brain science. As Sonia mentioned earlier, there is impact on the brain. It's a physical being. Our brains are physical, but it's also spiritual, and it's mental too. And so I get the opportunity to ask Jodi and Jerry some questions about their journey with their children. And sometimes that journey is unexpected. So it's kind of fun for me. I like to have the opportunity to talk. So I'm going to turn my chair because I like to feel like we're in a living room. And I'm just going to ask them through some questions about their journey with their kids. So, number 1, here's the first question. By the way, do y'all like the bling?
Yes,
Thank
very
you.
nice.
Thank you. I do too. Okay, I just happened to see it as I looked down. What did you find helpful over the years in providing guidance as you worked with your children with learning differences?
So let me just start by explaining that our youngest adopted daughter, we went to Uganda to adopt 3 kids, and when we got to the orphanage, they introduced us to 2 of the kids, and they didn't show us the 3rd child. We didn't know why, and time kept going by. We finally said, when will we get to meet her? And they finally took us to a classroom, and she was hiding in the back, and they called her very harshly to the front and said, come meet your parents. And she came up the center aisle with her head down, dragging her leg. And it turned out that she had had a brain injury when she was 6. It had never been diagnosed. She had multiple orthopedic issues, and she had been sitting in the back row of 5th grade for 3 years, and every time she didn't pass her exams, they took her out and paddled her. So we brought home this very broken little girl that we didn't really know what was wrong with her, and started on this journey of understanding the differences that she had. And so that sort of brought this idea of special needs into our family. Initially, we were so focused on her physical situation, which is a whole other story I could tell you, but this talk is about her learning differences. And initially, we were so focused on helping her with her walking and her bones and her movement. And when we started to see her do tasks in our house, we realized that she also had injured her brain. And her African name was Nalu. And we used to have an expression in our house. If you came up to something and you looked at it and you could not understand what could have possibly happened to it, we would say, it's been nalud. So she would interact with the world in a different way.
Beautiful, yes. So, what do you call her now? What's her name now?
Ruthie.
Ruthie, yes. So we're gonna hear a little bit more about Ruthie's journey and your other children's journey as well too. But so what did you find helpful over the years as you began to process that you had a child with learning differences? Jerry, what do you think?
Well, it was obvious from the start that we were going to have some educational assistance because she was behind. One of the things, this is just one of God's provisions. I was working at the time with a real estate agency that had a trainer, a woman who was a real estate trainer, and she had been a teacher before that, and she was retiring, and everybody around me, knew we were adopting, and we're all into it and all that sort of thing, and we're very supportive. But this woman approached me one day and said, Jerry, she knew we were adopting older children and kind of knew a little bit of our story. And she didn't know anything about Ruthie specifically, but she just approached me one day and said, I'm retiring. I don't really know what I'm going to be doing with all my time. If any of these children that you were adopting need any special, attention with their education, just let me know. And it was just one of God's miracles in our whole story because her name is Alice. Alice spent countless hours with Ruthie, one-on-one. And she was a very, very detailed. It used to drive me crazy when she'd try to train me something because she would say, all right, let's go back to page 1. And and that's the way she would work with Ruthie, was what Ruthie needed, and it was just one of the ways God provided for us.
And that was a blessing for us because we had 5 other kids at home, and one thing I just wanted to comment about that is if you can find help with schoolwork so that you're not the one if you have a child that needs that extra help. So I needed to focus so much relationally with Ruthie because she had so many trust issues from other things that had happened to her that I didn't also want to be the one, trying to teach her multiplication, which, Jesus is going to have to do that. But so for us, we just prayed. We had no money, and there were many things we needed for her, and literally God just answered prayer after prayer for the things that we needed for her. So don't forget to ask him boldly and audaciously, and don't be ashamed to let people in your dirty, chaotic house if it's someone that you need there.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the questions that I hear from parents a lot when they call is, we just really want to fix our children. And I'm a fix-it type of person. I don't know if there's any other fix-it people out there. Just go ahead and raise your hand, admit it. But it's over the years, that's been one of the hardest things for me to communicate with families, to be honest with you, is that sometimes we can't fix it. Maybe that's Jesus's job and not ours. And so how do you face the reality that you might not be able to fix what is broken? Anybody?
I think for all of our children, and each of our children, had their own woundedness. Certainly our adopted children, even biological children. I think in our case, I'm a big strengths person, and so in our family, we didn't focus so much on what was broken as what was strong. And so with all our kids, it was like, what are you good at? What can we press into? And so in Ruthie's case, she was really good at cooking, except when she left the stove on a few times, but we won't think about that. And art. So we tried to really press into those things. And even today, she's a grown woman, and you're going to meet her on video in a minute here. We have a gallery in our back hallway of all of her art. So whatever it was with each of our kids, we just tried to say, God has uniquely gifted you to give something to the world. And for Ruthie, we were like, God has given you this great ability to do art, and that's so beautiful. So, we sent her to art classes. She took cooking classes. So we didn't focus on weaknesses. Now, I focus on his weaknesses, but that's different.
As a result of that, today she's actually successfully working in culinary arts. So
yes, art and food, her two things. She works at edible arrangements.
Yep.
Which she loves, and she gets to be creative with food. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I know Robert Hensel is a man that was born with spina bifida, and he holds the Guinness World Record for the longest wheelie in a wheelchair, which is, anybody know? Anybody want to guess? A mile. But one of the things that he says that has impacted him over his life is that he really hopes people would notice him for his ability instead of his disability. Right. And I think that's important to remember, too. All right, so here's a tough one for you, Jerry. Okay? So, we think about what we can't see yet. And you guys have already focused on it a little bit in that where Ruthie is now. But how, in the moment, did you remind yourself to look for what you can't see?
Well,
or what gave you hope? I mean, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we are of a faith perspective where we do believe that there are things. I mean, one of my favorite go-to verses is, "Call me and I'll show you great and mighty things that you don't know." Mm-hmm. And that's what we found with Ruthie right along. Ruthie, I think